first part is a little bit theoretical, so we would first try to understand what are the important postulates behind it, and from that we would discuss more in detail about what exactly is going to happen there. Okay, 1 minute. Okay, let's see this. So first thing in kinetic theory of gases, got it? This theory is actually valid only for large number of particles. So we have to take a large sample space. Okay. So basic assumption is theory is valid. Theory is valid for large sample of particles. Okay. Now let's go through few postulates which I'm pretty sure you may be aware of. See, first thing, the gases consist of identical particles. Correct? Whatever the gas particles we are assuming, according to kinetic theory of gases, we assume to be identical, whether it is atoms, sorry, not electrons here. Okay, so atoms or molecules. So whether it is atoms or molecules that are so small, so far apart, on an average, that the actual volume of the molecules or the atoms is negligible in comparison to the empty spaces between them. So we can say that with respect to the particle size, they are quite far away from each other in the empty spaces. Next, gases are considered as a point mass. This is very important term. Got it? So we are considering gases as point masses. Okay. Therefore, the assumption of least volume of particles with the point mass explains the greater compressibility of gases. So when it comes to gases, why they have a greater compressibility, okay, is because of the fact that we are assuming the particles has point masses and the volume of those point masses is the least, and there are no forces of attraction between the particles. Okay, so there is no force of attraction between the particles, which tells us there is no potential energy existing between the particles. So and this is at any ordinary temperature and pressure. The support comes from the fact that gases expand and occupy all the space available to them. So at normal temperature and pressure conditions, we always see that as long as there is space available, gases will occupy that. So which means there is no forces of attraction between the particles, or there is no interaction happening between the particles. Next, particles of gases are always in constant and random motion. Okay, so they are always in constant and random motion. If the particles were at rest and occupied fixed positions, then a gas would have had a fixed shape which is not observed. And since all the particles are randomly moving, we can definitely say that there is no fixed shape of the gas. Next point is particles of a gas move in all possible directions. In 3 dimension, it can move in all possible directions, but it will move in straight lines. It will always move in straight lines. So which means if at all I have a particle here, if it start moving first in straight line, it will move to one particular part here, and then to this point, maybe then to this point. It is actually moving randomly but in straight lines. So this type of a motion is what we call it as the Brownian motion as well. So it moves in straight lines, and during their random motion they collide with each other and with the walls of the container. And when they hit the walls of the container, pressure is exerted. So pressure is exerted by the gases as a result of collision exerted by the gas as a result of collision of the particles with the walls of the container. Got it? So when it hits the walls of the container, suppose if this is a container, okay, so and as the particles will start moving towards the container and they hit the walls of the container, they will start exerting pressure. The collision of gas molecules are perfectly elastic. Okay, another very important assumption in kinetic theory of gases is that gas particles have perfectly elastic collisions, and which means that the total energy of the molecules before and after the collision remains same, isn't it or not? So in perfect elastic collision, we know that energy is conserved, there is no loss of energy. So there may be exchange of energy, okay, definitely between the particles there may be exchange of energy colliding between the colliding molecules. Their individual energy may change, but the sum of their energies remain constant, okay. That is the conservation of total energy. If there was a loss of kinetic energy, I mean if at all there was any loss of kinetic energy, then definitely we can say the motion of molecules will stop at some point and gases must settle down, which is not what happens, right? It is always observed that the gases keep randomly moving all the time, which tells us that the total kinetic energy is constant at a constant temperature, okay. So as long as we have fixed at a particular temperature, the kinetic energy remains constant irrespective of how randomly the molecules are colliding, okay. Another important point is, at any particular time if we take different particles in the gases, different particles in the gases have different speeds, okay. Very important point to note, they would have different speeds, correct, because they will keep hitting among themselves with the walls of the container. They may hit each other or collide each other in different forms. If this is a particle, this is a particle, they may collide each other head on. So if it is v1 v2, the velocity might exchange here, got it, if they are meeting head on. But if the particle is here, it is moving in this direction, another particle is moving in this direction. So if you see the vectors how they are meeting with each other, so they will meet or collide each other with some angle. So therefore their velocities may not remain same, they will keep on changing, or speeds keep on changing. So I can say that this assumption is reasonable because as the particle collides, we expect their speeds to change. Even if initial speeds of all the particles are same, the molecular collisions will disrupt their uniformity. So within no time, they will start becoming randomly moving with different speeds. Consequently, the particles must have different speeds which goes on changing constantly. I hope that makes clear. Now, it is possible to show that although the individual speeds of particles are changing, the distribution of speeds remains same, okay. So distribution of speeds, as in we take a range of speeds, in that particular range of speeds, you know, we may see there are certain number of particles which always have that speed. So at that particular temperature, so at a particular temperature, if we check out the distribution of speed, that might remain constant, but the speeds of an individual particle is constantly changing, okay. Next, if a molecule has variable speed, okay, so if a molecule has a variable speed, then it must have a variable kinetic energy also. So under these circumstances, we can talk only about average kinetic energy. So we cannot talk about a single molecule kinetic energy, we will take it as an average kinetic energy. So in kinetic energy, it is assumed that the average kinetic energy of the gas particles is directly proportional to the absolute temperature. So this comes as an assumption from kinetic theory of gases, but we will prove this as well, how kinetic energy is directly related to temperature, okay. Now, in kinetic theory of gases, we assumed gas particles as point masses. Therefore, we can say particles will only have translational kinetic energy. Okay. Any rigid body, for instance, if I take any rigid body like this, a rigid body, okay, can always possess three types of kinetic energies. Okay, one is translational kinetic energy, one is rotational kinetic energy, the other one is vibrational kinetic energy, okay, or in short, translational energy, rotational energy, and vibrational energy. Okay. In kinetic theory of gases, we are not considering anything about vibrational or rotational energies, because we are considering the particles as point masses only. So there is no particular shape, they are too small to understand whether there is any vibration within the molecule or whether there is any rotational changes that are happening within the molecule. Okay. So for instance, if I take, a molecule which is linear like this, if a molecule is linear like this, there may be vibration between these two atoms, which changes, which is a part of their kinetic energy as well. It will move from one place to the other place, so this is translational. And while moving, it may continuously keep rotating also like this. Okay, so it may keep rotating also, then it may have rotational kinetic energy as well. So in every rigid body, we always expect to have these three types of energies: translational, rotational, and vibrational. But as of now, in kinetic theory of gases, since we have assumed this particle has point masses, we are only worried about translational kinetic energy. Translational kinetic energy is about, a particle without changing its rigidity is moving to another particle at a particular time. Okay. So this is about translational kinetic energy. Now what I can say here, sorry, yeah, so what I can say here is the free volume present in the container. Suppose if at all there is a particular volume given for, volume of a container is given, then what I can say, the free volume present, that means empty space volume which is present, will be always equal to container volume minus the volume occupied by gas particles, minus volume occupied by gas particles. But you can see that the free volume, which I put as the same color there, you can see, correct, that would always be equal to the total container volume minus the gas particles. But if you see, in case of an ideal gas, okay, why I am using the word ideal gas from now onwards, because if you see the following assumptions whatever we have taken, these are all the similar assumptions for ideal gas as well. Okay. So I can say that in case of an ideal gas, V gas is negligible because they are point masses, their particle size is too less. So I can say this V gas is negligible here. So hence the volume occupied by the gas here, so volume, the free volume present for the ideal gas will be simply equal to the volume of the container itself. Okay. Next, in an ideal gas, if you recall, the interactions between the particles in an ideal gas is always zero. That means there is no interactions, zero interactions, which means there are okay, no forces of there are no forces of attraction. So there are no forces of attraction between the particles, Therefore, I can say that the potential energy of those particles is zero. Okay. So just to summarize, all the pointers whatever we have just gone through, just I'll put it as a summarized points here, correct. uh, First thing what we discussed about gas particles is that they have identical shape, size, and mass. Okay. And we usually take them as spherical shape. Okay. Got it. Although this shape is not actually defined, it is just a point mass, so I will assuming it like a spherical shape. Okay. And it is rigid as well as they are point masses. So this is the brief idea about gas particles. Next point about gas particles we have learned is that volume occupied by gases, volume occupied by gases is negligible. Okay, and there are no interactions between the particles. Next assumption is no interactions between the gas particles. Okay, next gases move in straight lines with random motion. This was asked as an objective question. What do you call this? This is called Brownian motion. Brownian motion. Okay. Next, this was also asked once as an objective question. How does the pressure is exerted in gases? This is because of the collisions with the walls of the container. Okay. And lastly, there is no effect of gravity. Gravity has no effect on particles. Got it? So we don't see these point masses get influenced by gravity. So these are the summarized points of kinetic theory of gases. Now our next objective is to understand the mathematical formulas behind kinetic theory of gases and how they are useful to understand lot more about the different speeds of gases. See what all things we will prove. First we will try to prove what is PV is equal to 1 by 3 MnC square, how total kinetic energy is equal to 3 by 2 nRT, how average kinetic is equal to 3 by 2 kT, and URMS is equal to root of 3 RT by M. Okay. So to prove that, I have to first assume a particle somewhere in a cubical box. Okay, sir, why cubical box? Okay, it is just to derive the equation much easier way. You can assume any other volume also, but this volume makes our derivation much easier. So assume I have a cubical box of length L. You can see here this is length L, edge length L. Okay, and it is a three-dimensional box where a particle is at this position A. Let's say it is at position A, that is where it is starting. From A, the particle is moving towards B. Okay, so while it is moving in x-axis. So I will write it has a speed ux. So I can say the momentum, you can see that the momentum of the particle before collisions with the walls of the container. Okay, before collision with the walls of the container, that must be equal to m into ux, because it is going in x axis only. I mean, it is going in x direction only. You will have mux. Then the momentum of the particle after the collision, the direction would change. So thereby it will be minus mux. Well, it should be vector. So I'm writing this way. Now, if I ask you what is the change in the momentum of that particle, okay, change in the momentum is mu as a magnitude mux, okay, mod of 2 mux. This is the change in the momentum. Next, if you see the distance traveled by the particle, see it has started from point A, it has reached to point B. That's when it has changed the direction, correct? So that means first it has traveled L distance and again it has traveled L distance for one particular, what I say, a complete what do you say, a complete path of that particle has finished. So I can say that the distance traveled by particle, okay, let me write down that from A it has moved towards B and then come back to its original position. Okay, so the total distance that it has covered is 2L. If L being the edge length, so then it has covered 2L. Next, you can see number of collisions per second of the wall. Number of collisions is nothing but per second how many times that particle has made an impact on B. So every time when one collision is been finished, when it goes from A to B and then comes back to A, so that is one collision. So again, if at all it has to make a collision, it has to travel 2L distance. So which means I can say that ux being the speed divided by 2L distance will make one particular collision, right? So this would be the number of collisions per second. I hope you guys understood that. Please do ask if you have any problem here. Okay. So collisions are nothing but per second how many number of times that particle is hitting that wall B. So that will be ux by 2L. Now what is the change in momentum per time? Per time is nothing but collision frequency, right? Per time is collision frequency, and we just calculated that 2mux is the change in momentum in divided by per time, which is nothing but multiplied by collisions, that is equal to 2 will get cancelled. I'll get mux square by L. So that will be the change in momentum per time. Okay, and we know that from Newton's second law that force can be defined as, okay, change in momentum, okay, change in momentum per time. Okay, so I can write this as dp by dt, where p is the linear momentum, is the linear momentum. Okay, so from here I can say the total force due to the impact of single particle, okay, on the walls, on the walls of the container, on the walls of the container will be equal to mux square by L, right? So you can see this is the change what we have seen, that change in momentum is mux square by L. So that would be the total force due to impact, right? Now we can define pressure. We know that pressure imparted by the particle on the walls of the surface L square, because if you see this surface area is L square. Okay, so on that L square, the amount of pressure that is exerted, P, will be equal to force divided by area. So force would be equal to mux square by L into surface area is L square, which makes it mux square by L cube. L cube is nothing but volume of that box, so I'll write it as V. Okay, so V is the volume of container. V is the volume of container. So from there I can say that total pressure on the walls of the container, total pressure on the walls of the container will be equal to P total in x direction, I am writing it as x, okay, will be equal to sum of I is equal to 1 to some n, if you have n number of particles which are moving in x direction. So sum of all those pressures, that would give more like an average, that will give the total amount of pressure that is exerted by all the particles, okay, at that particular instance. Okay, it is that particular instance. If at all there are certain number of particles which are colliding with the walls of the container, so that would be the total pressure on that wall. Okay, I hope you guys understood so far, right? So the total pressure in x direction would be equal to what we got this as summation of, okay, m u x1 square, sorry, I'll just write it this way, divided by v plus mu x2 square by v, and so on, correct? So this way, if at all I have n 1 to n number of particles, you will have mu xn square by v. Okay, so if I take that m by v common, so I will get this as m by v as common, and I can write this as summation of I is equal to 1 to n uxi square. Okay, so that will be the total pressure on the walls of the container when they are moving towards x direction. Okay, from here now we can define a very important term. So let us define a term called mean speed mean square sorry mean square speed ux square. Okay, ux square, this is in x direction, so I can write this as 1 by n summation of uxi whole square, where n is the total number of particles, Okay, again I'm writing the mean square speed only in x direction so far. Okay, so this is how I have defined it. Okay, so basically it is sum of all those. If at all you open the summation, it is like this: ux square will be nothing but ux1 square plus ux2 square plus and so on uxn square total divided by n. Okay, so this is the square mean average, correct? So I guess so far you understood that. Now what I'm doing, since I can say that since the pressure exerted in each direction, pressure exerted in each directions will be same. Okay, see, try to understand this. There is no deformation of container. Suppose if you have a particle in a box, understand this. Suppose if you have a particle in box like this, and it is moving in some random direction, so definitely it will have some x component, it will have some y component, it will have some z component. Like that, every particle which is moving will have all three different components. And if you take the I told you one point during kinetic theory of gases that the average speed of high sample of particles in a particular direction will always remain same. Same thing, if the average speed, if you check out in x direction square, and if you take y direction square and z direction square, if these are the averages, so this bar represents average, they will always be same as long as you have very high sample space. Okay, because it is an average value, that would be same, because the amount of distance in x, y and z, as long as it is same, temperature is same, then those average values of speeds will be same. Now since they exert an average speed to be same, then the pressure exerted on the walls of the container would be same. That means pressure exerted on x, a face a face which is perpendicular to x axis like this face, okay, or a face which is perpendicular to y axis, correct, or a face which is perpendicular to z axis. If you take any of this face, the pressure exerted on each of these face would be same. So that's the idea we are taking that. So the pressure exerted in each direction would be same if you take a three-dimensional molecule. So I can say that P average in x direction will be equal to P average in y direction will be equal to P average in Z direction. Okay, and since directions x, y, z are equivalent in vector chemistry, in vector physics it is called orthogonal, right? Since they are orthogonal, so we can say the average, the root mean square average in x axis and in y axis and in z axis would be same. So I can say that u square total, okay, or I'll just write it as average, will be equal to ux square plus uy square plus uz square, correct? Okay, so this is just the vector sum, so you can see that 3 ux square. Okay, if at all I can write that in x or y or z part. Now if you see the above equation, I just want to change that, mean square in x axis towards, average mean square, correct? So which is what we would usually get, right? This is the average speed of particle in any direction. Therefore what I can derive from here, okay, let me just take this question a bit low. Okay, from here what I can derive is that the total pressure will be equal to total pressure, where we are, yeah, check this equation again guys, this one. Okay, m by v, right? So total pressure is equal to m by v of summation I is equal to 1 to n uxi. So this uxi I can replace that with 1 by 3 times of u average, so which I can write this as, okay, implies P total is equal to 1 by 3 m n by v, correct? Because this average which I have defined, if you see that n value will also come here, because if at all I take the sum of all this, here it is, sum of all this, that is u average, that will be equal to ux square multiplied by n, correct? So that would be equal to 1 by 3 m n by v, v is there anyway, and u square, this one, right, which we call it as an average. Now this average I would call this as u square average, which I got, I'll call it as c square, which I'll write this as mean square speed, mean square speed. Therefore P into V is equal to 1 by 3 mn c square. So that's how we derive it. Okay, so you will do the same derivation in physics also, alright? So don't you will have the same fundamentals in physics. So the good part is the same chapter is repeated in physics as well, so same derivation you can go through. In chemistry, honestly, the derivation is not an important part, how you start from here is more important. Okay, so even if you slightly hesitant in here or there, okay, give it a time. There is a nice derivation which is given in H.C. Verma, you can go through that, you can understand that very easily. So PV is equal to 1 by 3 mnc square. Just understand the terminology is better, that is more important for us, correct? So here what are the important terms? M is the mass of a single particle, n is the total number of particle, c is the mean square speed. So what is that? What is that mean square speed? Let me show you that first. This is directly asked in competitive exams as a formula, so you can check out. U square, which is mean square speed, is u1 square plus u2 square plus u3 square, like that, for every particle, which are n number of particles divided by n. Okay, so this is the meaning of square mean square speed. This is the first thing we must know. Now second thing, we should be able to derive, because that is where we started off with. We are trying to derive first about where is it? Yeah, first about this, next about kinetic energy, average kinetic energy, and what is URMS. I'm trying to derive those terms now. Check it out. Second, we'll try to derive what is the total kinetic energy. Total kinetic energy, and this is also an average. Total average kinetic energy will be actually equal to half into m, because this will come common, into u1 square plus u2 square plus u3 square and so on, right? But we just defined this. You can see if I multiply this n with u square bar, you will get this entire thing, correct? So I will use that fundamental here and write that as total kinetic energy TKE will be equal to half into m into n into u average square, okay, or root mean square. Very important formula for problem solving. So how we get the total kinetic energy, okay. But we usually use the temperature form, because we know now that PV is equal to 1 by 3 mn c square, and from ideal gas equation, from ideal gas equation, we know that PV is equal to nRT as well. So we will use both of these and calculate this total kinetic energy. Total kinetic energy is equal to 3 by 2 times of PV, okay, because you can see this entire thing is coming out to be same. This mnu square is same as this, so that is equal to 3 times of PV. So if I put that 3 times of PV, I will get this as 3 by 2 PV. So 3 by 2 PV, I can write this as 3 by 2 nRT, okay. So this is the total kinetic energy average formula as 3 by 2 nRT. So I would suggest you remember this formula better, okay. This is the total kinetic energy formula. Now the next important kinetic energy part is about average kinetic energy of a single particle, okay. So average kinetic energy of single particle. So if we check that for a single particle, I'll call it as AKE, average kinetic energy, is equal to total kinetic energy, okay, per n moles, right? Sorry, per n number of particles. Because if you have n number of particles, you just averaging that total energy by n. So the total energy what we found out to be 3 by 2 nRT, that I have to divide it by n, okay. Number of particles I can always write it as number of moles multiplied by Avogadro number. I'm sure you have done this in mole concept, okay. So I'm substituting that back here, so I'll get average kinetic energy is equal to 3 by 2 times of nRT by n into Na, which is equal to 3 by 2 R by Na into T. This R is a constant value, Na is a constant value. So if I substitute these two constant values, I will get this as 3 by 2 into Kt. K is another constant which is defined by R by Na, okay. So R is 8.314 and Avogadro value you know. So if you substitute that, you will get this as 1.38 into 10 raised to power of minus 23, and we call this K as Boltzmann's constant. Boltzmann's constant, okay. One very important thing to note, if you observe carefully above here, is we got two formulas now, okay. One formula tells us that average kinetic energy is 3 by 2 kT, You can see K is a constant, so it is only dependent on temperature, while total energy, total kinetic energy is actually dependent on number of moles as well as temperature. So I can say that TKE, total kinetic energy, TKE, total kinetic energy depends on N as well as T, but average kinetic energy depends only on T. Okay. So in thermodynamics, we will study about two important properties of matter. One is extensive, the other one is intensive. When you use the word extensive, that means it is something which depends on mass. Okay, mass or the number of moles or volume, like that. Got it? So you can see that TKE here, which is dependent on number of moles, it is an extensive property. Extensive property. While AKE only depends on temperature, so it is independent of the amount you have taken. So suppose if I take 1 mole of a gas, 10 moles of a gas, 20 moles of a gas, got it? As long as the temperature is same, the average kinetic energy of all the particles would be same. Okay, so this is an intensive property. It's an intensive property. And another important thing what you can observe about AKE is I can say this AKE is independent of, sorry, AKE as well as TKE both, sorry, AKE and TKE is independent of type of molecule. Okay, for different molecules, so that means if you take hydrogen gas, oxygen gas, chlorine gas, as long as they obey kinetic theory of gases, and if they are at same temperature, they will always have same amount of kinetic energy. Okay, at least one thing we are very sure of, that its average kinetic energy irrespective of even their moles would be same as long as temperature is same. So this is one thing we were discussing earlier, that the average kinetic energy Ke average is directly proportional to T. So I think that we have proved right now. Okay. I hope you guys understood this, how it has been derived. Okay. Now we have derived three things. The fourth thing is about uh, RMS speed, which is RMS speed. Got it? RMS speed is nothing but whatever the average mean square we got. Mean square is this one, mean square. If I take the root of that mean square, I will get RMS. That is root mean square. So RMS is nothing but root mean square speed. Okay, so in short, if as an objective questions, if it is asked, so you must understand how we are writing the formula here. So it is u1 square plus u2 square plus on so on un square divided by n, and n is in the root itself. Okay, now total kinetic energy we got that as half into mn u square average, right? So which I can write this as 3 by 2 nRT as well. Now another important thing which you need to note is, suppose if I write molecular mass of any particle. So molecular mass is nothing but the mass of 1 mole of that particles. So which means I can write this as n into Na, number of moles into Avogadro, sorry, not n, m into Na. M is the mass into Avogadro number of particles. This is the total mass. And I also define number of moles as n by Na. Total number of particles by Avogadro number of particles is n. So therefore, we can always use this m into n, mass into number of particles, which is equal to molar mass by Na into, and N I can write this as N into Na. So Na will get cancelled, M into N. So you can see that, sorry, this small m into N will be equal to capital M into small n. So exactly reverse of that. Got it? That's the way to remember. Small m into capital N is equal to capital M into small n. Therefore, I can write this as how we can change this here. You can see I can write this as half into n into m. Okay, that is capital M into small n, capital N, small m into capital N, which I am replacing that with small into capital, into u square average is equal to 3 by 2 nRT. So that n would get cancelled, right? 2 will get cancelled, so we will be left out with u square average is equal to 3RT by m. Okay, which implies u square under root, which I denote that as URMS, will be equal to under root of 3RT by m. So that's how we get the derivation that root mean square velocity or speed of a particle is under root of 3RT by m. Okay. One important thing you need to note here is what are the units we are using. Got it? So very important thing are units. Most of the time URMS is given is in meters per second. If it is given in meters per second, the capital M, which is molar mass, must be taken in kgs per mole. Okay, so it is usually we get this as 16 grams, 32 grams, like that. So always convert the data into kgs. Next, the R value you have to take it in joules. So in joules we know that its value is 8.314 joules. Temperature must be taken in Kelvin scale only. Okay, so this is the usage, how you need to put it down. Another important derivation, just let me take this little down. Yeah. Another important derivation within this is we know that PV is equal to nRT. Okay, and since it is the way, I can write this as PM is equal to dRT also, if you just recall from ideal gas equation, right, where I can write that number of moles is equal to weight by molar mass. So number of moles by volume will become density. So D is the density of the gas. So P is equal to density into RT by M, and RT by M is just, we defined it as URMS square. Okay, well, 3 times of it if you have to multiply that. So therefore I can write this as URMS is equal to under root of 3 times of P by D. Okay, and again units need to be taken care of. D should be kgs per meter cube. Okay, and P should be Newton per meter square or pascals. I hope you guys understood the derivations. Okay, so these are the 4 important formulas you must remember. One is the pressure formula, second one is the AKE, TKE, and last one RMS, how the URMS is going to go. Now let us just go through simple questions first. What are the types of questions you will come across this? And mostly these questions are I have taken mostly to check out the units, whether we are taking the units correctly or not. A question is asked like this: calculate the pressure exerted in atmospheres by 10 grams of oxygen in 2 liters containing, given URMS is 200 meters per second. So I will directly use the formula here as PV is equal to 1 by 3 mn c square. Okay, m into n, in fact it is the total mass, right? The total mass is already given to us, so I can directly substitute that. So which implies pressure is equal to 1 by 3 into mass. I have to write that in grams and convert that into kgs. So I converted that into kgs, and you can see URMS is already given as 200. RMS is given, so C square means this is RMS square, which is nothing but mean square. So that divided by volume. So volume is given as 2 liters. If I multiply that by 10 raised to power of minus 3, I'll convert that into meter cube. So just for your information, 1 liter is equal to 1 decimeter cube, which is equal to 10 raised to power of minus 3 meter cube. Okay. Now I'll get pressure in terms of Newton per meter square. So if I substitute that, I'm getting this as 1, 2 will get cancelled there. So 2 by 3 will be remained into 10 raised to power of 6, 8. So 2 by 3 into 10 raised to power of 8, Newton per meter square. Okay. Now if at all I have to convert that into ATM, we know that I have to divide that by 1.013 into 10 raised to power of 5, because 1.013 into 10 raised to power of 5 is 1 ATM. This many pascals is 1 ATM. So that would be equal to 2 by 3 times of 10 raised to power of 3 approximately. I am writing this as ATM approximate because I have taken that 1.013 as 1. So that would be the answer. Okay. So just I am going for these questions especially for unit conversions. Now check this next question. Calculate URMS of N2 gas at an altitude of 20 kilometers where temperature is 200 kelvins. So we are not worried about which altitude it is as long as temperature is provided to us. So URMS is equal to 3 RT by M, which is equal to under root of 3 times into 8.314. Okay. So it is 8.314 into 200 divided by molar mass, which is 28 into 10 raised to power of minus 3. So on solving everything, I think I'll directly give you the answer. You guys can check that later. So it is 222 meters per second is what you will get. Now carefully observe that the molar mass normally it is written in grams. So it is 28 grams per mole. So I'm writing that in kgs. This is where most of the mistakes happen. Okay. I guess that is clear. Next. Another type of question that could be asked is based on the total kinetic energy. So the question asked is about total kinetic energy here. So total kinetic energy of a sample of 10 grams of H2, you can see 10 grams of H2 gas at a temperature of 27 degrees centigrade. So it's pretty simple. Total kinetic energy depends, I told you that it depends on number of moles as well as temperature, which is 3 by 2 nRT. Okay. So which will be equal to 3 by 2 times of n, which is 10 by 2 because 10 is the molar mass, 10 is the weight divided by 2, which is molar mass. We get number of moles into 8.314 into 300. Got it? Now here I will get this as 9 into how much I'm getting, 3 by 2, then 5. I think I'm getting approximately, after solving everything, I'm getting 18.7 into 10 raised to power of 3 joules. Okay. So approximately 18.7 kilojoules. Got it. So just make sure you substitute the right terms. That should help you. See the next question. This is another interesting question. This was more familiarly asked. It says that average kinetic energy per molecule, pressure exerted, temperature of the gas, in the the sample, I think this must have been sample, I made a mistake. In the sample of oxygen gas having mass 64 grams kept in a container of 22.4 liters having a mean square speed of 400 meter square per second square. So let's see that. See, there are many ways you can start. What I would do, I would try to calculate temperature, because from temperature every other derivation becomes easy. This is my way. You can always start with calculating first in terms of pressure and then get back to kinetic energy and finally calculate temperature. Either ways it is fine. So what I am doing is I am trying to first calculate the temperature. So you know that a mean square is equal to 3RT by m, 3RT by m, which implies T will be equal to m mean square by 3R. So I'll get this as molar mass is 32, molar mass is 32 into 400, but this 32 is in gram per mole, so I'm writing that as 10 raised to power of minus 3, so that it is converted into kgs, that divided by 3 into 8.314. So when you work this out, T would come as 5.13 into 10 raised to power of minus 1, or 0.513 kelvins. So very low temperature. Alright, so this is the temperature what we got. Next, average kinetic energy, which is equal to 3 by 2 times of kT, K as in the Boltzmann's constant. Now that is the reason why I calculated temperature, because it becomes very easy for us to calculate once we get temperature. So 3 by 2 into 1.38 into 10 raised to power of minus 23, which is the value of Boltzmann's constant, into 0.513. I would get approximately 1.06 into 10 raised to power of minus 23 joules. So that would be the value of average kinetic energy. Finally, pressure. Pressure P is equal to nRT by V, because that becomes very easy, because now temperature is something which I already calculated. He has already mentioned 64 grams. So 64 divided by 32, that will give us number of moles. 8 point, I'll try to bring everything in atmosphere. Excuse me. So I can take R value 0.0821 divided by volume, which is already given as 22.4 liters, multiplied by temperature, which is 0.513 kelvins. Okay, so the pressure here is 0.0037 atm. Okay, so at such pressure this would exist. Have you guys understood that how to solve this type of questions? Last one. Okay, and I'll just give you a hint here. Okay, not much worry about this question here. Let me just read it once. For a gas containing 10 raised to power of 23 molecules, each having a mass of 10 raised to power of minus 22 grams in a volume of 1 decimeter cube, calculate the total kinetic energy if the RMS speed is 10 raised to power of 5. Also calculate the temperature. Okay. Same thing, same here. Number of moles, I can write this as N by Na, because Na is given. I'm straight away calculating number of moles here. Okay, just a minute, guys. Just take this call. Yeah, sorry, guys. Check this. N is equal to N by Na. That would be equal to N given as 10 raised to power of 23 divided by Na, 6.023 into 10 raised to power of 23. So approximately it is 1 by 6 moles, and mass is 10 raised to power of minus 22 grams given. Yeah, minus 22 grams, that is given already. So which is equal to 10 raised to power of minus 25 kgs. See, I am writing everything in kgs. Volume given as 1 decimeter cube, which is 10 raised to power of minus 3 meter cube. So substituting all of this, you will get URMS. URMS is already given 10 raised to power of 5 centimeters per second. So if I convert that into meters, it will be 10 raised to power of 3 meters per second. So total kinetic energy will be equal to half into mn u square, right? So this is what we know. See this formula, that's why I told you, you can remember in this form also, because sometimes directly mass is given, so it becomes easy to solve. And n is also given 23 into 10 raised to power of 3. Solving that, we'll get 5 into 10 raised to the power of 3 or 5000 joules. We know total kinetic energy, which is 3 by 2 nRT is equal to 5000. From there substitute n value is 1 by 6. We will get temperature as 2500 kelvins. So these are the type of questions. Please go through the solution once again, follow each and every unit properly and check out. It looks very silly questions, but there is a high chance of committing mistakes. So that's why I gave you some variety. Just go through the solutions, that should help you now. Okay. Now that's the first part of kinetic theory of gases, where we have introduced the important formulas. Now how that becomes very essential and important to understand Maxwell's-Boltzmann's distribution curves is what we will learn right now. So what topic we are learning right now is Maxwell-Boltzmann's distribution of molecular speeds. Okay. Right. So here we have two basic assumptions. First, the speed of the molecule of the gas changes continuously as a result of collisions. Therefore, we only talk about average speeds. I think this is just taken directly from KTG. So from KTG also we have learned the same thing, that speed will keep changing, right? But on an average we can always assume, as long as the temperature is constant, the speed might be constant or speed might be same. Next, since the observed properties like pressure and average kinetic energy do not change with time, it is expected that it would be possible if the number of particles between any definite range must remain constant, even though speed of the individual particles may change continuously. Like I said earlier, if you take a range of speeds, got it, in a particular range, okay, over the time, the speed or the number of particles may be same, or the number of particles for a particular number of particles, the speed might be same. Okay, so this kind of an thing can be mathematically derived. Okay, so that is what we will be checking right now. Maxwell distribution equation, it comes from something called Fourier series, which you will learn in engineering. But as of now, we directly take the equation, and from there we'll try to understand all the important scenarios in it. So first important definition that we must know is what is distribution. See, the number of molecules between any two speeds is always called as distribution. So between a range of speeds, how many number of particles are there, what are their speeds, this entire theory of learning about their speeds is called distribution. Next, Maxwell studied this distribution pattern and gave this following equation. So this is the equation which he has given. Let us understand term by term. First I'll explain the term and I'll show you how it is written. dN means number of particles which are having speeds between u and u plus du. So particles having different speeds u and u plus du. Okay, these are the dN values. Okay, dN, and n is the total number of particles. Okay, m is the molar mass of the gas. Next, u square is the mean average square, which we have learned so far. Again, u square is the same thing. Exp as in exponential form. So exponential of this entire thing, this is different. Okay, exponential of that multiplied by u square into du. Okay, so that is what I have written here. So dN having number of particles, dN having speeds between u plus du in terms of total number of particles present. M is the molar mass, n is the total number of particles. Now if you observe the equation, in equation there are two functions. You can see this diagram which I have written, I mean this color which I have written, this is an exponentially decreasing function. And then we have a parabolic function u square. This is a parabolic function. And then these are all the constants. This is all constant values. So what I'm writing, 4 pi, and this entire thing, I'm writing it as a, and this entire thing m by 2 RT, I'm taking it as b, and u square I'm writing it as x square. This u square also as x square. So I can represent like a function y is equal to, what I did, if you just go back to the equation, this du which was there, I took it to the left hand side, this n also I took it to the left hand side. So what happened here, you can see dn by n means number of fraction of particles having a speed between u and u plus du. So earlier I used to tell dn is the number of particles. Now if it is dn by n, which means fraction of particles which have a speed between u and u plus du. Okay, so if I write that how it looks like, okay, so let me show exactly how the function looks like. So from here it is important, let me write that here. Here based on that, let me write where y is equal to, show that y is equal to 1 by n dn by du. This is how I define it as y. Next, u square is nothing but x square. Next, a is given as m by 2 pi rt whole raised to power of 3 by 2. Okay, and b is equal to m by 2 rt. Okay, and we can see that values of a and b depends on m by t ratio. So it depends on m by t ratio. Okay, and like I said, dn by n is the fraction of fraction of gas particles between having a speed between uh, u and u plus du. These are the number of fraction of particles which you have. Okay, now so you can see that for a gas of molar mass m and at constant temperature T, so as long as this molar mass is constant, temperature is constant, then we can say y can be written as 4 pi ax square into e raised to power of minus bx square. So you can see it is actually an amalgam of two functions. One is ax square, which I'll call it as a parabolic function. The other one is e raised to power of minus bx square, which is an exponentially decreasing function. Usually y is equal to some constant ax square is a parabolic function which goes this way. Okay, in the positive quadrant it will go this way, got it? In the negative quadrant it will go this way. So this is how the parabolic function will be. And well, I'm only bothered about the positive values here. Next, exponentially decreasing function will always go this way. So it is actually combination of these two functions. So what we can observe here is that at low speeds, ax square, which is a parabolic function, that will be more dominant. So here the parabolic function will be more dominant. As at a very small values of x, you can put that this value becomes so less that it will come close to 1. So it will always approach to 1. So its contribution would be very less. Now, but at high speeds, what you'll observe, e raised to power of minus bx square, it is exponentially decreasing function. So it will drastically decrease. So that means function will dominate and this function will try to decrease faster and takes that towards 0. So initially what would happen in the graph, initially you will see a parabolic function will rise up like this and then an exponentially function will take it, to the down here. So this is called bell curve. One of the very important thing you will study in engineering, okay, in maths. What is a bell curve and what is its application? Got it? So we will be dealing with a lot of statistics and random data in engineering, where you'd be using bell curves a lot, and this is the same fundamental you'll apply there also. So it's it's a combination of two functions. One is a parabolic function. So let me write down that here. This is parabolic, and this is exponentially decreasing function. exponentially decreasing function. Okay, so this is how the graph looks like usually. So the plot which I am doing right now is between the fraction of particles divided by du into u, I mean versus u. Okay, so when I take these two, so what are the important points you can note down here is that the area under the curve, okay, so whatever the area under the curve, that represents fraction of particles in all the speed ranges and it is equal to unity. If at all I take the total area under the curve, that will come out to be unity. Okay, but suppose if I take a small section here, so I drew here a small section for you to understand easily. Correct. So suppose if I take this small section, what can I write here? So for this small section, I can say dn by n du, which is y. Okay, I can say this is almost like a rectangle only. This is almost like a rectangle. So area of that rectangle is equal to y into x. So this would be y value into x. X is the du, which is nothing but 1 by dn by n. Dn by n is what we learned as the fraction of particles ranging from u, between u and u plus du. In this range, whatever the number of particles are, right, the fraction of those particles is what is dn by n. Now imagine like that, if I keep taking the range for everything, so let me just write down that. Suppose here I started off with speeds u1 and u1 plus du. So what I'll get here as fraction of particles between speeds u1 and u1 plus du. Okay, that would be equal to dn1 by n. So these are few number of fraction of particles. Correct. Similarly, if at all I take this as u2 and this side it is u2 plus du. Okay, this is some other range. So what I can say, area of the rectangle, I'll label this as plot 2, and label this as plot 1. So area of the rectangle in plot 2, okay, plot 2 would be equal to dn2 by n du into du, so which is equal to dn2 by n. So I'm getting different fraction of particles. Got it? So what I can say, this is a fraction of particles between, this is fraction of particles having speeds between u2 and u2 plus du. Okay, like that, imagine if at all I take sum of all the fractions, so what do I get? Summation of dni by n. So that would be the area of this entire curve. And how much that should be? That should be equal to 1, because it is a fraction. Total summation will come to be n, so n by n should be equal to 1. Okay, this is a typical JEE question that is being asked as a, statements. It could be asked as a formula that could be asked, like, what exactly is this formula? It is nothing but fraction of particles, and of all the ranges of speed, if you add, then you will get that as 1. Okay, so I hope you guys understood that. This is an important significance of the Maxwell's equation. Two important things: where it is dominant. We have seen that it is more dominant on initially at low speeds. Can you see that at low speeds it was parabolic function which was more dominant? At high speeds it was exponentially decreasing function which was more dominant. Now I can always derive a term called most probable speed, correct, and I can derive that to get a value of root of 2RT by m. Okay, let us first understand what exactly is this most probable speed, and then we'll try to derive that. So most probable speed is speed of largest group or set, largest group or set which let me write down that, which means where y value, the one which we have defined as y value is maximum, y value is maximum. Okay, so let me take this image here, let me tell you where exactly it is. So this is the point. Okay, so you can see these are the maximum fraction of particles having a speed. So this speed is what we call it as most probable speed. Got it? So how to derive that as root 2 RT by m? Let us see that. We know that it is getting a maximum at that point. So if it gets a maximum at that point, you know, we have derived a function already, that y is equal to ax square into e raised to power of minus bx square. Correct? This is what we have derived. So if at all I differentiate that, so I'll get dy by dx is equal to 2ax into exponential of minus bx square plus ax square into minus bx square. Okay, minus bx square no, sorry, exponential of minus bx square into minus 2bx is equal to 0. Right, I hope you guys are following the differentiation. So I can take this as 2ax into exponential of minus bx square as common, so I'll be left out with minus bx square plus 1 is equal to 0. So x is equal to 1 by root of b, which implies we know that value of b, if at all I put that, we'll get this as 2 RT by m, because m was defined as m by 2 RT. So if you put that b value, so you will get this under root of 2 RT by m. So this x was the speed, which we call it as most probable speed, as 2 RT by m. One important thing to be noted here is that RMS speed mu mp is slightly less than RMS, because you know RMS is root of 3 RT by m. Here this is root of 2 RT by m.